morning, everyone. It's so nice to be here with you this morning, and welcome to our March Town Hall. I will plan on providing the latest updates for about the first 15 minutes or so of this town hall, and then we'll have plenty of time remaining to answer your questions. I need to start with expressing my genuine gratitude for your continued hard work and perseverance through the pandemic fatigue that I know we're all experiencing. It's been a hard year, and it's still hard. And as we're dealing with the restrictions of COVID-19 and its impact on our work and our mental health, I find it helpful and even uplifting to focus on our post-pandemic future. And from our quick pivot to remote teaching and learning and working 1 year ago to the careful planning for a safe return to campus last fall, what's shown through for me is this community's ongoing creativity and innovation. And I'm so excited to build on that with you. And our ability to harness those innovations, our student-centered approach to managing through the pandemic, our investments in digital technology to meet students where they are and to improve our student experience. These are what will define our future together. And I strongly believe that as we emerge from this pandemic, we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to redefine the future of higher education, one that works for every student, whenever and however they need us over the course of their long lives and their zigzagging careers. And what's exciting about right now at CU Denver, with the positive elements of our disruption that we're discovering, and with our strategic planning efforts, and with our equity task force efforts and our ideal student experience work, and so many other important initiatives that we are looking forward to creating an even better future together. So, okay, a moment about the weather. My first Colorado March has brought 70-degree temperatures and then a big snowstorm and an actual snow day that some of you spent digging out or sledding with your kids. But most importantly, the arrival of a growing supply of vaccines, including right here on this campus. And it really does feel like a time of fresh hope. And thus far, we've run 2 COVID vaccine distribution clinics on campus on March 7th and 12th, where CU Denver employees over 60 were able to drive up to the 5th Street garage and get their vaccines, along with hundreds of other people in other priority categories. And I was so thrilled to watch this happen for them and for our whole community to be on the road to a more normal rhythm of an in-person life. And I too am eager to get the vaccine, and that opportunity is going to happen for all of us soon. In fact, sooner than we expected, thanks to the announcement by Governor Polis that student-facing faculty and staff in higher ed and those over 50 will now be a part of phase 1B4 that are now eligible for vaccines this Friday, March 19th, which is great. And last week's CU Denver COVID update email included a form to sign up for a future vaccine appointment on campus. And people who've completed that form will be randomly selected to receive vaccines for future clinics starting this Friday. And I think the link to that form will be in the chat. And all students and temporary employees will also be eligible under this designation. So keep an eye on your university email for the invitations. They come from emails saying primarybio.com or from Links Together. We don't know how many vaccines we'll get for our garage, so we strongly encourage everyone in our community to get the vaccine any way you can, whether it's on campus or elsewhere. Getting the vaccine is protecting yourself, but it's also helping society reach herd immunity, which helps returning to a more normal semester in the fall. We are grateful to have CU Denver faculty with expertise in these areas, like Jennifer Reich, who is a national expert on vaccine equity. And she and Norbert Chavez, who runs our city center, and others are working on a plan to address vaccine hesitancy and also creating opportunities for us to partner on community vaccine clinics, which is wonderful. Before I go into more detail about fall planning efforts, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the tremendous toll this the pandemic has taken on all of us. The global death count is staggering, nearly 3 million worldwide, 535,000 in the US, some 6,000 deaths right here in Colorado. And I've personally spoken to students and faculty and staff who have stories of loss that are heartbreaking. And we know this pandemic has created loss in other forms as well, like loss of connection with friends and family, and loss of safety and stability and a known future. And here at CU Denver, we want to find a way for members of our community to honor those lost during this pandemic. We're planning an afternoon of acknowledgement on April 1st for our community to recognize and reflect on the losses that we've sustained. And we're going to be sharing more details on this soon. And our community experienced another loss just 2 weeks ago with the death of Patrick Brown, our Director of Veteran and Military Student Services. And while Patrick's death wasn't COVID related, the impact of it during this time feels doubly heart-wrenching. And we're all so grateful for his service, both to this country and the US Army, and also to this university through his positive support for our student veterans. And many of us are struggling to deal with his untimely death. And I encourage you to lean on colleagues and to use the mental health resources that we have available through community programs such as the Colorado Crisis Line or CCEEP, and for students, our own CU Denver Counseling Center. And my thanks to Assistant Vice Chancellor Melanie Rudolph Crawford and the Veterans and Military Student Services team for assisting our student veterans with immediate needs they have. And as we cope with the very real trauma and hardships that the pandemic has ushered in, there is now good reason to believe that we're approaching the beginning of the end. And we must now start to reorient ourselves to move forward together as a community in order to heal and make progress and to establish our next normal in forward-looking ways. And so, as I've said, planning for the fall, we're working towards a full return for fall semester. And this is based on our anticipation that vaccines will be widespread and that public health guidance will be more relaxed by then. And if it turns out not to be the case, we'll scale back. But we truly believe there are good science-based reasons to plan for a full return. We know that many of our students and faculty and staff want to be on campus. We know that certain disciplines are more effectively practiced in person, and also that isolation continues to be a significant challenge on the mental health of our community. And we believe there are important equity reasons to get more of our students back to campus. The evidence is clear that remote learning presents the most challenges to our low-income, first-gen, underrepresented minority students. I do know that the idea of coming back to campus may raise anxiety for some, and it will take time to adjust to the idea. And that's why we went out early with this announcement, so people can have time to plan, to think it over, and to ask questions, which I know you're going to have today in this town hall. Our highest priority is absolutely and has always been keeping everyone safe, and we're going to rely on our widespread vaccination of our community and continued testing, and as always, the latest public health guidance. This past Friday, I launched the Links Together Task Force, which is a team of students and faculty and staff to think through and operationalize every aspect of this return. And as with last fall, we'll use a hub and spoke structure with a central steering committee and a number of subcommittees. CLAS Dean Pam Jansma and University Council and COVID guru Chris Puckett, who's here with us today, are chairing this effort. And I've asked the task force to prepare for and coordinate a full fall reopening as the best case scenario. And this means planning for classes with no classroom capacity restriction, also a full set of on-campus activities and student services, and student housing and dining at full capacity, including the opening, and this is so exciting, of City Heights and the impact of 600 first-year students that will now be housed right in the middle of our campus, and full service campus operations and the full resumption of campus research and creative activity. And in addition to our preferred scenario with no classroom capacity restrictions, the task force is also planning for alternate scenarios, including more limited classroom capacity and limited on-campus services in case conditions and public health guidance do not allow for a fuller fall reopening. And the task force is also going to be developing plans to support students, staff, and faculty, as many of us will be returning to campus and to the classroom for the first time in over a year. And our incoming first-year students may need more support after a disrupted senior year of high school. And our returning sophomores, many of them have never been to campus. So task force preparations will need to include thinking about how we have expanded social and mental health supports. And you all have developed so many innovations over the last year, from redesigning your curriculum to learning new technologies and improved access and delivery of student services. And I've asked the task force specifically to incorporate the positive disruptive activities that we need to continue and that we're imagining as part of our next normal at CU Denver. And many of you pre-submitted questions for today's town hall about continuing to work from home. So I want to take a minute to address this issue up front. The Links Together committee, there's a subcommittee that's specifically been tasked with developing recommendations on this very topic. And while we believe that there can be some flexibility for some remote work in some job classifications, it's unlikely that most faculty and staff will be 100% remote like we have been during the bulk of the pandemic. But we are reviewing our policies on flexible work, and we'll have more to share on this later this spring. In almost all cases, the mode of work that you've used over the past year can continue through the end of this semester. We do not intend to issue any campus-wide guidance for faculty and staff to return to the office before June 1st. Over the summer, we do plan to ramp up our operations for in-person learning in the fall, during which 12-month faculty and staff will gradually return to the office. And again, this is predicated on vaccine availability and public health guidance, and will provide plenty of notice so that you'll have time to get ready for being in the office or classroom again. And as we've seen, nothing with this pandemic is a certainty, so we'll remain vigilant and be flexible as we approach the fall. Now I want to talk a little bit about strategic planning for 2030. The 2030 strategic planning process for CU Denver is in full swing. And phase 1 was focused on creating a high-level vision for 2030 and refreshing our purpose and vision and values and desired characteristics of a CU Denver graduate. And draft statements of those are available to everyone on the planning website. And we invite your feedback, which we will finalize towards the end of the semester. And now we've been in phase 2, which over 130 people are serving on 8 different vision teams, and they're generating innovative ideas to differentiate CU Denver by 2030. And there are 8 of these groups, including lead with student success and how we better the world through research and creative work, how we educate for the future, how we amplify innovation and entrepreneurship. And I want to say thank you to the hundreds of people who've already provided input in phase 2. And the vision teams are now at a point that they'd like to test their ideas with you before drafting their reports in early April. So you can still get involved by attending one of the team sessions or just sending your feedback. You can always find ways to share by looking on our strategic planning website. And later in the semester, we'll take the team's reports and craft a cohesive plan for CU Denver 2030, and there'll be more opportunities to share your thoughts at that point. Our plan is to have our new campus 2030 strategic plan ready to go by June. This is a 30,000-foot vision and strategy, which will guide our future efforts. And if we don't know where we're headed in the future, we're not going to get there. And that's why this is so important. I want to provide a shift now and talk about a little bit about online. I want to provide an update on where we are in our online efforts. As you know, CU Denver has a long history, 20 plus years of online learning, and we've been a leader in the system in this regard. And online and hybrid and digital learning at CU Denver will remain a strategic priority and will likely continue to grow to meet the needs of our student body and to differentiate our university. And our shifting relationship with the Office of Digital Education is one part of our total online strategy, which will be multifaceted. Over the next year, we will create and execute a CU Denver specific strategy for online, digital, and hybrid education that takes advantages of CU Denver's strengths, including our strong faculty expertise and involvement and creativity in program development, while also partnering when it makes sense to do so. And the aim ties into our long-term strategic planning process. With lots of input from faculty and staff on the position description, we launched last week a national search for a dedicated campus-wide online leader to help steer CU Denver's efforts. And I'm happy to say that SEHD Professor Brad Hinson and CLAS Professor Ronica Rooks will be chairing our search. And thank you to both of you. And I also want to provide an update on where our partnership stands with ODE, and I'd like to do so with transparency, clarity, and inclusiveness. First, let me give you a very short history to bring everyone up to date. You may know that the CU system embarked on an initiative in fall 2019 to grow our combined online offerings and presence. And as part of this, CU Denver and Anschutz, the ODE that we had was moved to the system to provide support for all 4 campuses. In the fall, CU President Mark Kennedy and the 4 campus chancellors made a decision to shift from a system-driven initiative to one that's driven by each campus. Academic decisions will be made by the campuses, by faculty, and by programs. This is good. And over the last 6 months, we've been working very closely with the CU system and with members of our CU Denver community, faculty and staff, to determine the best structure for achieving our mutual aims for online education. And faculty, staff, and I myself personally have been directly involved in this effort with the goal of reaching terms that were highly favorable for CU Denver. And we are very close to an agreement that will assist us in meeting pieces of our online strategy. And the agreement will provide support to our existing online and hybrid programs while we develop a longer-term campus strategy. And it will also provide support for programs that have the potential to scale up significantly to receive enhanced suite of support services, including program-specific marketing. And the financial terms that we've reached for these enhanced services are better than we could have gotten on the market. And we have the ability to exit the agreement if it isn't working. So in essence, I feel that we're getting the best of both worlds. The security of having ODE support for next year, for programs that more support for programs that wish to scale, all while still giving us flexibility to define our own future. It took a while to get to this place, but I feel good about where we are now. And the service agreement with ODE has been reviewed by teams of faculty and staff who I thank very much for diligently providing feedback. And I believe that today there's a faculty assembly meeting where all members have been provided with the services agreement for transparent review. And tomorrow there's an open house at 1 p.m. where anyone who wishes to learn more can attend. A very quick update on leadership searches. We're excited, super excited, to welcome our new Vice Chancellor for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, Antonio Farias, who's most recently from University of Florida, who just started at CU Denver yesterday. So welcome, Antonio. The searches for a CU Denver Provost and Senior Vice Chancellor for Strategic Enrollment and Student Success are well underway, and we expect to have finalists doing virtual visits this spring. Thank you again to everybody who's been working so hard on search committees. Equity Task Force. I'm extremely pleased to report that our Equity Task Force is progressing quite well, thanks to the hard work of 150 people who are on the steering committee and various supporting action teams. Their recommendations come out in April. Because the task force doubles as one of our strategic planning visioning teams, they're also developing 2030 goals for DEI. This is so important for us moving forward. We have a specific town hall devoted to their Equity Task Force recommendations, which will take place on April 15th with co-chairs of the Equity Task Force, Professors John Ronquillo and Antoine Jefferson, and myself, moderated by Antonio Farias. Okay, we have a lot going on, and I want to wrap this up and get to your questions. Many of you are working long hours to support all of these different initiatives. A year ago, you sprinted to pivot and adapt to the pandemic, and it turns out that that sprint has become a marathon, and I know your endurance is being tested. But I've also seen how remarkably resilient this community is. Throughout this all hands on deck crisis, I have been so inspired by how people from all corners of our university have taken ownership, have gone well beyond what was expected during pre-pandemic times. And our momentum is real. When so much has changed in our world and may feel at times like it's out of control, the change has opened up huge possibilities for us thinking about and defining our own future in new and different ways. And this community has risen to that challenge with courage, with compassion, and with creativity. I want to thank you all and now introduce the panel and get right over to your questions, which you can start submitting. Of course, Rod Nairn, our provost, Jennifer Sobonet, our chief financial officer, Chris Puckett, our legal counsel, who is our COVID guru, Elena Jones, our interim vice provost and senior vice chancellor of student success. And as always, of course, Dean Paul Teskey of the School of Public Affairs will be moderating. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Chancellor Marks, and thanks all to our panelists and participants. Looks like we have well over 400 people today. So appreciate that Chancellor Marks is spearheading these town halls and being so detailed and transparent about our thinking in this challenging time. We have a series of pre-submitted questions from faculty and staff, and then about 7 or 8 that have come in already. And please add more to the Q&A. We'll do our best to get to as many of those as possible. The ones we can't get to are being answered behind the scenes. And if, by the end of 12 o'clock today, if we haven't answered your question, please contact one of us, and we can do it offline and get to it in that manner. So I want to start with a couple of vaccine questions for Chris Puckett, our COVID guru. We're going to have a lot of questions for Chris. So he doesn't have his bow tie on today, but he's got a nice tie. So he'll be on screen a fair amount. And this one is from staff asking about the requirements for vaccine regarding the fall return. Will being vaccinated be a requirement for students, and will vaccinations be required for employees?
That is a great question, and the answer has to be answered at the moment. The answer would be no, but there is a lot of time between here and the fall, and what happens with the vaccine, how it gets approved by the FDA, or one of the vaccines or many of the vaccines get approved by the FDA, how the world changes between now and August. I don't know exactly what the fall is going to look like, but what I can tell you for now is we're not asking for that information. We're not tracking it. While I'm on vaccines, I'm going to go ahead and tackle a few of these other questions and get them out of the way. So if you didn't hear Chancellor Marks, all employees will be invited. All employees. That means students, undergraduate employees, graduate employees, GTAs, GRAs, RAs. We are including temporary employees. This includes our regular contractors. That means our janitorial staff. That means our security staff. That means our housing and food staff. Okay. So all of those people, and Kelly Mason's been doing this today, I think, it's actually due at noon, I think, has been gathering all of that data, and it's going to go over to the Auraria Health Center. And that list is going to get randomized along with a list that come from the other institutions on the Auraria campus. And out of that, our campus, and this is the Auraria Health Center run by Steve Monaco, who's done a terrific job this season. They will be the ones who are going to be generating those invitations. There could be invitations to the clinic that happens later this week. We are hopeful, and we continue to ask for, I think the ask last week was for 5,500 vaccines for the week. Instead of getting 5,500, the Auraria Clinic got 300. So we are very, very hopeful that that is going to change. And then in the near future, we will be able to provide large numbers of vaccines. However, at the moment, that isn't happening. So what does that mean? That means sign up if you're comfortable getting the vaccine anywhere and everywhere you can, because that's going to be important for all of us to be able to return to somewhat normal. I joked about it with my wife, but there was a Montrose appointment at King Soopers that looks like it's open this weekend. It might be the weekend to drive to Montrose. So those are very clear. A couple other things that continue to come up. The vaccine is free. It is free. It is free. Kaiser Family Foundation has done some research that suggests people don't understand that. So it's important that we continue to get that information out, both to our employees, but also to our students, so that they understand it's free and you do not have to provide any evidence of lawful status. In fact, it's illegal to ask for that in Colorado. So please, please, please help communicate that to your communities. I did just get a really great question, and I'll just jump right into it because this is a tough question. It says, even if campus is somewhat safe in fall 2021, with approximately 20 to 25% of the population against, quote unquote, I guess, or being vaccine hesitant, taking public transportation, and the rest, how do we plan on addressing that? I think that's a great question. And I think the chancellor started to address it in saying that where we want to go as a campus is to encourage vaccines. It is the way forward for us as a campus to get there. Jennifer Reich and others and I are talking about how might we create ways to address people who are vaccine hesitant. So absolutely, number one, we want to try and address people's concerns. And there's a student government event that a number of us are going to be part of on April 1st, for example, that the students are putting together to try and address this. Our goal is to try and to do more of that. I think ultimately, What will also end up is that testing is going to be a huge part of our return to the fall semester, because I think that testing is going to have to be paired with vaccine, meaning there's going to be a lot of testing and there's going to be a lot of encouragement to get the vaccine. So I think between those two things, we're going to be absolutely focused in the fall on trying to make it as safe as possible. I think I got criticized one time for calling it the safe return when it should be the safer return. And that is absolutely correct, because there are still going to be people in our community who can't get vaccinated, who don't feel like they want to. And so we need to leave space for that. But at the same time, we need to continue to encourage folks to get vaccinated and make sure that we're doing testing the way we need to. So hopefully I knocked a few of your questions off there, Paul.
That's great, Chris. Thank you. A quick follow-up actually that came in on the live. If someone comes in for a vaccine, starting Friday, do they need to fill out this, to do the skill staff training and to fill out the attestation form, or can they just get the vaccine?
If they're driving onto campus, just go get the vaccine. I mean, our preference obviously is for everybody to sign in and do the attestation every day. That's how we're kind of helping to make sure we're all keeping each other accountable. But if you're planning just to drive onto campus, we're not going to care about that. What we are going to care about is getting people through and quickly and helping them get out the door.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris. Moving back to strategic planning, if Marty Dunn could pop up on screen. Marty is our Dean of Engineering, Design and Computing, and also the campus lead for the strategic planning. Chancellor Marks mentioned all the activity going on, but there were some questions about if folks are not on any of the strategic planning committees, but they want to be involved, they have some thoughts, how can they share them? How can they get involved?
Well, thanks, Paul, and thanks for kind of allowing me to share a little bit about that. And first, let me kind of start. I also, as Chancellor Marks did, really want to thank the community writ large that's participating in our strategic planning, the focused efforts of about 150 people who are serving on various teams, helping develop these kind of great big ideas. And we're right in the middle of all of that, kind of from the community. I think we've already received something like somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 unique kind of ideas, comments, suggestions. And so in my view, I'm really excited that we're on a path, to create an exciting kind of vision and plan for the university that's really our plan that we all collectively own. The three phases that Chancellor Marks mentioned are all kind of about to be in operation in parallel. The first phase really focused on our purpose, vision, and values, which is a bit broader information. The report has been published and is on the website. And so maybe the very short answer to your question, Paul, is the website, which is posted in the Q&A. And if you just Google CU Denver Strategic Plan, I think it pops up number one, at least it does on mine. Maybe that's because I do it so often. There are opportunities to comment and provide feedback on the phase one kind of results kind of right now, and that'll continue over the next month or so. The phase two teams are all developing ideas and all have their own community engagement plans and are engaging in various ways, including kind of including the opportunity through the website to provide feedback for folks. And that happens kind of daily. The info comes in, so please kind of do this. And then the third, as we get into the third phase and start synthesizing and turning these big ideas into a cohesive plan for the future, we'll have a series of town halls that are going to roll out in early May across the campus and allow kind of everybody who is interested on campus to participate, kind of hear about the plan, react, and provide feedback. And then maybe the last thing I'll say again on the website, we're hosting kind of now an office hours on Friday, just sort of open office hours each Friday. And if folks just want to pop in, want to kind of ask questions, provide feedback, etc., kind of I invite you to do so. So again, I'll stop by thanking everybody so much for all of your efforts to date.
Thank you, Marty. Also note there was a question live that came in about how to get involved with Links Together. And I know in the chat we put an email, Links Together at ucdenver.edu. But Chancellor Marks or anyone else, there was a question sort of about whether the committees have been formed and whether there's still time to get involved and that sort of thing.
I'm going to kick the question over to Chris, who's co-chairing it.
Okay.
Absolutely. Dean Jansma and I would welcome people's involvement. And we did put it out in last week's weekly announcements to invite people as well, but links together at ucdenver.edu is the way to contact us right now. Although we do anticipate in the future, I was just communicating with somebody this morning about focus groups and surveys. So I fully anticipate that in addition to being a part of a team, if somebody is so interested in that, that there will be significant opportunities for as many people and as many students who want to engage, that we'll create opportunities for that to happen. So please, 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 the more the merrier when it comes to these types of activities, because the more of us who get together and have good thoughts and come up with good ideas, the better off we are. So thanks.
Thanks, Chris. Next question is for Jennifer Sobonet from a faculty member, asking that some faculty perceive that perhaps CU Denver or AHEC buildings have not yet had enough steps taken to be adequately ventilated. What steps will be taken or have been taken in our buildings to mitigate the risk of accumulated aerosol viruses in space where students, faculty, and staff will be meeting?
Thank you, Paul. First of all, I'm really sorry that, that faculty feel that way. And that means I just haven't done enough communicating to get the word out about our facilities management team and the great job that they've been doing since we went remote a year ago. And a quick shout out to that team. Just a few years ago, they won the Appa Award for Excellence. It's an international award and is the highest level of recognition for facilities management. So let me give you some information about this. After COVID-19 caused us to go remote this time last year, and as the months unfolded and we really learned about the importance of building ventilation, we spent a lot of energy and resources learning how to best handle the ventilation issues. So here's what we've done. We've learned from the CDC, EPA, and ASHRAE that the amount of outside air percentage mixture matters even more given COVID-19. So we've adjusted this for all of our buildings per the guidelines. We learned from a Harvard study that the humidity of our buildings can slow the spread of aerosols. So we've adjusted the humidity to this 40 to 60% per the guidelines. We also learned that using MERV 13 filters is the code recommendation for mitigating the transmission of infectious aerosol or airborne particles. A MERV filter, now MERV means minimum efficiency reporting value, is highly efficient and the maximum level of filter we can install in our buildings. So we've ensured that all of the air handler units have these filters. So over summer 2020, we did all of this work. And before we brought back students and faculty and staff in fall 2020, we audited all of the air handler units to validate that they're performing at this optimum performance. We did the same for the return in spring 2021, and we'll continue to do this going forward. And for classrooms and offices and AHEC-owned buildings, they are following all of the same guidelines. So I hope that kind of provides some of that information, Paul, that others were seeking.
That's great. Thanks, Jennifer. Next one back to Chris, or more around families and the vaccine. One came in live, but we also had a question from the start, which is some of us are caregivers for people in our family. Even if we get vaccinated, it might be risky and risky for a disabled family member to be exposed to COVID. Would faculty and staff in this situation still be allowed to work remotely until their family member gets vaccinated? And then there's a live question about whether our on-campus vaccinations might expand to include faculty, family members of faculty and staff.
So I'll take it in reverse order. So currently we are required a condition upon getting the vaccine and being eligible to send it out is we have to follow the priority category. So currently the campus clinics are focused on phase 1B4, which includes higher ed and then a number of other categories. So at this point, that's where we are focused. We are extremely hopeful that in the near future, as the governor said, and as Chancellor Marks said earlier, April 15th is his date, that we will very soon be able to move into and open up the doors and invite darn near everybody. I wouldn't be surprised if vaccines become available, that happens sooner. But I will tell you, it continues to surprise me day in and day out how the numbers change. So I would just say we'll stay tuned. I think the first part of that question is a great one. And I think it's one that probably is one that we're going to need to talk about for a while. And that's part of the reason that we want to have such a long runway between now and August, because I think I look at the world in a couple different ways as an attorney. You know, I'm pretty diametric in many ways, but I try to have a continuum in this space, which is I think there are a lot of us who feel like if I get the vaccine and the people around me, then I'll be probably pretty safe. And I think then there's a group of folks who are probably in the space of I've got other reasons, other people at home that can't get vaccinated or whatever. Our hope is that we can work in the units and the offices and those spaces that have individuals in those locations and do what we did similarly this last year, which is have a process by which we can help those folks and identify how we can accommodate people to work remotely where we can. That's not to say that we can guarantee that, you know, everybody is able to work remote forever. I don't think that's likely. I don't think that's realistic. I think that especially when we have circumstances that involve health and caregiving and other types of pieces to that, I think that's something that we're going to want to try and work on and try and identify how we can get the work done and do it as safely as possible. I do think personally that I think there's a lot of space in this new world that's going to be 2 days in the office, 3 days in the office for a lot of us. I think there's some of us probably like me who I like to be in the office, and it'll be good for me to get back, but that doesn't mean that's the right thing for everybody. So I think there's part of what we want to do over this period of time is to develop some guidelines and some ideas about how to help supervisors and units have those conversations and identify ways that we can continue and find those areas where we are successful fully remotely. And I saw another question about somebody asking, can we do some surveys or evaluations of how more productive people are at home? Because I think that's true. I joked with somebody the other day that I don't have a commute. So frankly, university gets a lot more work out of me. And I think that's true for a lot of us. So I think absolutely those are the conversations we want to have moving forward. And I wouldn't say that there's an easy or right answer at the moment.
Great, thanks so much, Chris. Question for Provost Nairn about fall teaching. Presuming there may be more in-person classes in the fall, but there also needs to be an option for remote learners. Will the institution ensure appropriate technology is available to stream in-person lectures or otherwise ensure remote learners access the same content as the in-person learners without instructors simply having to teach the same class twice? Rod?
Hey, thanks, Paul. Thanks for that question. You know, obviously the university recognizes that there's a continual need to improve our digital technology. And I think there will be a lot of conversations about what that represents. I think there are different aspects of that. So part of the conversation, I'm sure, will be issues about streaming and whether or not that is the best pedagogical approach, you know, in a given situation is something that needs further conversation. Certainly, we know that there are areas of the campus that are behind when it comes to digital technology for teaching and learning, and we want to do as much as we possibly can to enhance that. We've already done some of that. There's additional federal funds that are going to be coming available as part of all of the stimulus and COVID initiatives that there are that hopefully we can use to strengthen what we have in the way of our technology. And I think that particular issue needs to be something that's discussed, you know, as it relates to specific circumstances and particular classes and programs. So I think that faculty can look forward to that discussion as we get into the summer and into the fall.
Great, thanks so much, Rod. There's a few questions both in advance and in the Q&A about money, particularly merit increases. So I want to go to Jennifer Sobenig, and the question is, can an update be provided on the merit pool possibility? Based on the Board of Regents last meeting, it sounds as though there will likely be no merit pool unless fall enrollment reaches a certain number, which would mean there might be a merit pool enacted in January 22, but that seems like a long time after the year that the faculty member or staff member did the work. So is there an update on that? And also a related question about processes for equity reviews for faculty and staff compensation, and just where we are with those issues this year. Thanks, Jennifer.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I'll take those questions in sequence. So yes, at the February board meeting, the board considered a new timeline for merit pool increase decisions for the enrollment-based campuses. The new timeline proposes that the enrollment-based campuses, and that's CU Boulder, Colorado Springs, and CU Denver, that we assess fall enrollment revenue before determining the financial feasibility of a merit pool decision. So this better aligns our merit pool decisions with our financial situations. So for this year, it means that if we hit predetermined revenue targets, we would implement merit pool increases on January 1 of 22. So first, before I go further, I want to be clear that consideration of a new timeline doesn't impact our classified employees who, as required by state law, will always remain a part of the state of Colorado processes for performance review and compensation increases. This also will not impact CU Anschutz, which means that if this passes the board in April, we'll work with CU Anschutz on how to operationalize this for our consolidated employees. So now if this passes, we will need to work through operationalizing this all together. It would be a transparent process with board approvals for every step along the way. So as we think about how to operationalize this, we will need to use scenario planning to lay out the potential options for merit pool increases that would be dependent on fall enrollment and revenue targets. We would also need to consider how we can better align our performance period cycle to a January merit pool rather than a July merit pool. And needless to say, we would work with our campus leaders, the cabinet, the deans, our governance leaders to figure all of this out. Now, just a quick reminder, because I've seen some questions about this in the chat coming in too, is our goal for July 1, 2021 budget has always been to restore the temporary pay cuts and furloughs that we had to take this year. So the good news is we were able to restore those as of March 1st, 2021, so about 15 days ago, 4 months earlier than we had even hoped. So that still remains our goal, is to not have to do temporary pay cuts and furloughs for next year. I do not anticipate a merit pool increase for FY 21-22 at this point. We proposed actually a 0% merit pool to the board in February for the FY 21-22 period, because there's just still so much uncertainty about COVID-19, about vaccines, and about our ongoing revenue from tuition rate increases, enrollment, and state funding. So if we do transition to this new proposed methodology, it could only enhance the opportunity for a merit pool, because we will know so much more about all of those uncertainties by this fall. And that merit pool would start January 1 of 22. So that would actually mean sooner merit increases than we're planning now. Paul, I'm going to shift gears to the second question that you asked me about the Equal Pay for Equal Work Act. So that was signed into law on March 22 of 2019 and went into effect January 1st, 2021. It amended Colorado law and provides new wage discrimination and employer provisions that differ from federal law and other state equal pay laws. Our HR office has been working since this law passed to ensure we're in compliance with the legislation. Huge shout out to our HR team for all of this work. This effort includes posting all new job openings and certain promotional opportunities, providing salary ranges on all of our postings, and ongoing maintenance of job descriptions and salary history records. Outreach efforts continue across campus with deans, campus leaders, and our HR business partners to provide guidance on the important legislative requirements. There is a section on the Human Resources website dedicated specifically to this topic and updated regularly. In addition to this, ensuring the compliance with the new law, the CU System Office and the CU campuses retained an external consultant to assist us with an equity study. We have just started the review and analysis of those results, and we'll begin meeting with campus leaders shortly on this And we'll provide updates to our campus groups as we go through this process. Paul, I'm going to hand it back to you.
That's excellent. Thanks, Jennifer. Complicated questions and great answers. I want to give one to Chancellor Michelle Marks that's come in about mental health. And with all of the issues going on, obviously much more stress on everybody's mental health. And so the question asks, is leadership committed to providing a boost in funding that would help meet this huge need?
We are committed. And in fact, we have already done so over the course of this last year with $500,000 from the CU Foundation that was generously provided to our campus to support increased need for mental health needs. We have, as a result, we've been able to support our case management process as well as provide more counseling opportunities for students as well as faculty and staff. Mental health needs on college campuses were growing even pre-pandemic. And so as we look towards the future, it is something that we have been and will continue to be acutely aware of, our need to, the challenges that our students coming to college face and how we can do even more to support them. And in addition to the supporting mental health needs of our entire community, we're also focusing on wellness and well-being for our entire campus. So I hope going forward, and even as a part of our strategic planning process, we're thinking about the kind of campus well-being and climate that makes sense to support all of our mental health needs.
Thank you, Chancellor Marks. There's a couple of questions in the live Q&A about fall classes in person and how, in addition to the technology, but how safety is going to work if the class has 50 people, and obviously there's a lot of uncertainty about between now and then what happens. But for the planning now, and maybe this is Chris or maybe Jennifer and Rod, what should units be thinking about in terms of the in-person class capacity and how best to deal with that uncertainty?
Jump in on that one. I think, and Elena too, I think may have some thoughts too on this too from the registrar standpoint, but currently, as Chancellor Marks said, we are planning for no restrictions for the fall. That's scenario A. There are also scenarios B and C that include something other than no restrictions. And I would say C is probably kind of where we are right now, which is 6-foot restrictions. And then perhaps there's something in between. So the plan and our hope is, as part of the Links Together task force, is to put together some guidelines and ideas so that it encourages our units to prepare for scenarios B and C. I think what we've talked about, at least with Chancellor Marks, has been if we didn't plan for something different in the fall and at least try for something different in the fall, then it's unlikely we would even, if let's say the restrictions didn't exist and we hadn't planned for it, there's virtually no way for us to be prepared for that. So in this, doing it this way, we will be prepared and ready to go if there's no restrictions. We've done the restrictions world, so we've done both ends of that. I think where we're going to struggle is probably in the middle. And I think I've seen some questions already about that. Where will people be required to teach both online and in person and all that? What I can tell you at this point is our hope is with the task force and the teams we've got is to try and come up with some good guidance on that. One thing that we are committed to, and I think, I'm not sure I heard Chancellor Marks say this earlier, but we are communicating to our students to say this, which is in person means in person. Okay, and that means they need to be prepared to be in person. So and we're able to pull that off, those faculty who are teaching in person are not going to have to teach remote at the same time. What that means is they're not going to have to do dual modalities at the same time if we're actually able to do in person the way we want to. We say the same thing about hybrid. If a student's not comfortable coming to campus, they shouldn't sign up for in-person or hybrid, because our goal really is to have those in person, assuming, as we've all talked about, it's safe, the public health guidance allows us to do it, vaccines available, everyone's gotten the vaccine, and so on and so forth. So that's the way we're headed, at least with the planning at this moment, recognizing that I talked to a department where I think they decided everything was hybrid. That's another solution. But I think the goal really is to identify what can we do as much as possible to have a critical mass, especially for the new first-year students who are coming on campus. I don't think you mentioned it, Chancellor Marks, but City Heights is opening this fall. We're going to have 600 first-year students in the middle of our flippin' campus. it's going to be just tremendous and terrific and different, and we need to be prepared for it. And so part of it is getting ready for that. Part of it is, and this, I hate to say this, but part of it is a planning exercise for scenarios B and C, because it's possible those things happen too. And we'll be ready. We've done it. You all have done it. As Chancellor Marks said, you know how to do it. Unfortunately, it takes more work, but our hope is that by June 1st, we can have the plans ready to go so that we don't spend all summer creating new plans.
Chris, I just one thing I want to add, which is that we're going to learn a lot in the next 2 months. The vaccine pipeline availability is going to hopefully give certainly everybody in our community the availability to be vaccinated. We'll understand more what kind of hesitancy we have happening here. And so I think this is the strong plan going forward. And in June, should we need to pivot or make a different decision, we'll be prepared to do that.
Elena, did you want to add anything about the fall classroom scheduling?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Paula. And obviously, I echo everything that Chris and Chancellor Marks said. The only other piece I would add is that let's keep in mind that we're still targeting our April 1st start for fall enrollment. So that's a really important date for us to keep in mind. So I think part of what we're talking about is it's a little bit challenging to think about April 1st fall enrollment, planning for a scenario where all the information is that anyone that wants a vaccine can have it well before the fall. But that's what we're planning towards. We're planning towards that optimistic future and needing to set the classes up in a way so students can plan accordingly. And there's so many students out there that really are looking for that in-person campus experience. So my hat's off to all of the faculty, department chairs, and schools and colleges, because I know it's a lot of work and it's challenging for us to be thinking about that future when right now we're living in a very different present. But I'm very appreciative for all the work the Links Together team will do to be thinking about our different scenarios.
Thanks, Elena. There were a couple of questions about RTD and transport generally and parking, and I'm not sure if we know the answers to them all, but Jennifer, can you talk a little bit about what we know on eco passes and RTD and related issues?
Sure, thanks, Paul. And you're right. It's with the answers that we do know I can provide. It's a moving target, but I've seen a couple questions come through that are specific to this semester, and we do have the eco pass and the college pass alive and well. So use it. There's on our website. And I think we can put in the chat what that website URL is. There's information about getting the Eco Pass and getting the College Pass. And so that is working really well right now. And we're in negotiations with RTD about what that will look like for the fall. Those are going extraordinarily well, I will say. And so I just am so thankful for the leadership at RTD for the way they've been able to help us with the Eco Pass and the College Pass. And I do expect that it might not be exactly the same as what we have this semester, but it will be in place for the fall. And it's just a matter of figuring out those details with our partners at RTD.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. There's a live question about whether there's any chance of commencement happening and the availability happening in a live way, I guess, and the availability of families to access that, or whether commencement in May is going to be virtual again. I'm not sure who best, Michelle or Kelly wants to jump in, but.
Sure, I'll take it. We have commencement in 2 ways this spring. We have a virtual commencement, which will give every student an opportunity to have their name mentioned and do some personalization. And then we also have opportunities for any student who wants to, both graduates, 2021 spring graduates, and then anybody who graduated in 2020 with a virtual graduation who wants an opportunity to walk across the stage and get a picture taken, to do so on the quad in front of the Tivoli with a photographer, and I know I'll be there. We do have to, right now we're excited to be offering a version of an in-person commencement ceremony that won't look the same. It will be students will make an appointment and be socially distanced, and if public health guidelines were to change and allow us to expand that between now and then, we could contemplate inviting family members. But right now we're following public health guidelines, and we have limited the ceremony in order to respect the social distancing and gathering requirements.
Great, thanks. So I think one more question before I kick it back to Chancellor Marks to wrap things up before noon. There's a couple of questions from, I think, faculty and staff about travel for academic conferences, research activities, other kinds of travel that they may need to do, I assume starting in the fall. Where are we in thinking about that? And obviously, again, it's something we'll learn more about as the months pass on. But Chris or Rod, do you want to talk to that?
I think it's certainly started. I mean, we have started to talk about this. We'd love to get it freed up completely, but obviously we got to follow public health guidelines. And right now it's not safe or perceived to be safe to do that. But we are looking at these on a case-by-case basis. There have been a few things that have been approved already for specific situations where we can set things up to be as safe as we possibly can. So we will continue to look at that, and the hope is that we get everybody vaccinated, we get the herd immunity, and we can free up travel for the folks to do their research projects, their field studies, whatever else it is that they need to do. But for now, it's a special application and case-by-case review.
Well, thanks, Rod. I want to thank all of our panelists. I want to thank the 420 or 30 people that have been online with us. And then I want to also give it back to Chancellor Marks for some final comments.
Thank you. I'll just echo everyone's appreciation for all that you have done for CU Denver to keep this campus safe and keep this campus going over the course of last year, and also for all of the exciting work that's happening now that will define our future. I think there's real reason for optimism. There's a real sense of momentum. There's absolutely anxiety in the air about what the future will bring, but it's better to be in a place of anxiety and thinking about how we move into our post-pandemic than where we were a year ago. So I'm grateful to all of you, grateful for where we are as a campus, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you so much.